Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I am Jeremy Cherney, and I'm happy to be with you this morning to talk about Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm sure we'll have a few other people joining us as they come on this morning. That's me. I'm excited to talk to you about Microsoft SharePoint and talk about OneDrive and talk about documents and document storage and collaboration and how you can do all that. And along the way, you may have some questions. Feel free to drop those in the chat. There'll be time at the end as well. Or if you want to get a hold of me after hours or something like that, or outside of the after hours. Anytime you want to get a hold of me, you can do that. You will also at the end get a brief survey and the presentation slides via email. So please complete that survey because your feedback is so valuable to us. We do read it. We enhance our presentations each time we take it in and see what we can do about it. So talk a little bit about why we're talking about SharePoint and OneDrive. And it's really in part because of what most of us are familiar with this, which is how we used to access files. Usually you have your file server at the office, right? The box sitting in the closet somewhere. And that would have your storage, your central storage. And then you would have from your Windows computer, most likely you'd have these drive letters, right? You'd have your shared drive, and depending on what it was, it might be called your S drive or your P drive, whatever you X drive, whatever you call that is your shared drive where you have a lot of documents stored. And then you'd also have your private drive, which would be usually, it might be called your U drive or your W drive, something like that. And while it was always everyone else had the same drive letter, when you looked at your drive letter, it only showed you your documents. So it was your private drive for things you would do or in progress work. And then we would traditionally organize things into folders and use Windows Explorer to find and select the documents, right? So that's kind of where a lot of you still are in some cases, and even in some ways. You might be in both worlds between here and in the cloud. But for a lot of people who are looking to get rid of their file servers, looking at moving things to the cloud for some of the benefits, this is kind of the world in some ways you might be leaving if you choose that route. So I want to talk about where you kind of are. The Microsoft 365 is what's going to enable all of this for you. That's Microsoft's subscription service. Some of you know that, some of you are already using it for email and for other components, maybe Microsoft Teams. I like this little Swiss Army metaphor because it really is. There's just all these different tools that you get. And just like a Swiss Army knife, the more expensive the knife, the more tools you get. Microsoft is the same way. And but there is a thing of having each tool for its purpose. And so where Tobin gets involved is helping you manage your Microsoft 365 environment, manage the security, the administration, training, development, integration, webinars such as this. If you haven't got it yet, or you're wondering how much it costs, so you're thinking about moving up, this is what most of our clients and most businesses under 300 users are in one of these kind of tiers of Microsoft with their current pricing. So you got the Business Basic that includes just about everything except full Microsoft Office. You got Business Standard that includes just about everything plus Microsoft Office on the desktop. The other plan gives you Microsoft Office web only. I should update that slide and just say web only. Then you have Apps for Business, which is really just the Microsoft Office on the desktop and Office Online, as well as OneDrive. And I did update the slide. I noticed. I think I don't know if they changed something or if I was in error in the past, but SharePoint is not indicated as one of the things that comes with that. So I changed that to be OneDrive only. And then Business Premium. So this is the full stack, which is not only including Microsoft Office at the desktop and Office Online and all the storage and all the other tools from their Swiss Army knife that most people need, but also some advanced security for how you work with your documents, document governance, mobile device management, some other things, which is even more important as people move from their on-premise file servers to the cloud. There's certain things that file server provided, and you still want to get some of those things. And there's some configuration and things that need to happen. Let's see. Another thing I want to talk about as we get into this, because this is another aspect of it that is really important to get, because if you are looking at using the data you've got already up there and looking to enhance that, if you're looking at moving data up to Microsoft, and this is Microsoft's chart, but really if you look, almost any big cloud provider is going to have a very similar chart. And what it is who's responsible for what. And you can see, and this is the most important part in the box, that under any scenario with Microsoft, whether they're hosting your data, partially hosting it, somewhat hosting it, you're doing it on premise, this is a responsibility. You are always 100% responsible for your data and your devices and your accounts and even some of the management infrastructure. And it's largely the same on the others. So why is that important? Because you want to know when you're doing any of these things that there's still some things to be done. One of the challenges we have when clients move to SharePoint or OneDrive is understanding some of that, because there's kind of a myth out there that once we move to the cloud, Microsoft's got our back, I don't have to worry about it anymore. And we always have our security hat on at Tobin, and it's just not the case, nor is it what they say contractually. So you want to have your attention on that. So when we talk about start with security, that's why we talk about that shared responsibility. Anytime we're dealing with your data, we're concerned about confidentiality of it, integrity of it, or the availability of it. And I'm going to come back to this slide in more detail, but I want you to know as you're thinking about this, security is going to be woven into the background here. Because once you move things up into the cloud, some things become way easier. Like it's way easier to share documents with outside parties, which is great. And if it's uncontrolled or undesirable, maybe a breach. So it's something to think about. Plus the backup of all your data that's up in Microsoft 365. They've got some ways they back it up and restore it, but it may not be work for everybody's use case or every business needs. And there's other options for backing that up, and we recommend you consider those as well. So what is SharePoint? SharePoint is I'm going to throw an old school web term, back from the 2000s, intranet. That was the idea, everyone knew about websites, and then someone said, hey, what if we had a website inside our organization where it was just a website for our use? No, it wasn't for the public. And then we could put our internal news bulletins and calendars and do that whole kind of thing, put some documents up there and do all that. And thus SharePoint fulfills that need. So back in the day when SharePoint first came out, it was an on-premise standalone product that you would run on your own servers and provide the SharePoint experience. Now you get SharePoint Online as part of the Microsoft 365 experience. And I'm going to shift into some demo mode here a little bit on that so you can see a little bit what I'm talking about here. Actually, I'm going to do this two more slides and then go into demo mode. So this is a picture of what one looks like. So SharePoint has lots of templates, and they have different templates, and one of them you get is what's called a default team site. And so it's through a web browser, from any web browser, you have the proper credentials. Again, it's not public facing. It uses your Office 365 ID and password and multi-factor authentication, because you're all using multi-factor authentication, right? That's critical. But it makes it available from your phone too. There's actually a SharePoint app on your phone, so you can see the same experience. So it's a great way to communicate all kinds of information, not just communicate, but get and receive, send and receive information with your team, within departments. A lot of people have a remote workforce now, or partially remote, or people are on the road. So much of a need for quick access to get and update information. So you can actually do a lot of that with SharePoint, which is pretty cool. So let me do a quick demo of what that looks like. I'm going to stop my share here and start a new share here. All right. I think last time I was going back and forth with a demo, I neglected to get the screens switch. So if you see me talking about something that doesn't make any sense, it might be because I'm on the wrong screen. So please do a shout out or something so I can switch. But this is just a virtual machine I've got stood up. So this would just be like your desktop or workstation. I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge, but this works with all the other browsers. And I go right into, I've got mine set to go to office.com. So that's where you can access all of this through the web. Everything you have with Microsoft Office can be gotten through there. And I'm going to go to here and go to SharePoint. And I'm going to look at some sites I've got here. So this is a communication site. That's kind of a easy site that you can put together for communicating. So you've got these things as kind of the default template. I haven't customized this in any way, but they make it easy to customize. You just click edit, and then you can change these pictures and change what it says. There's news here, news and information, events. So you can put some calendar stuff. Oh, but look, there's documents. So not only are people putting this kind of information in a SharePoint site, but if we go to the documents section, you can see that we have a place to actually put documents, and we're going to get in a little bit into that in a moment here. But, you know, part of this, we're talking about documents, but I want you to get, there's something kind of cool with the SharePoint site, right? If you do have a distributed workforce, if you've got people on the road, you know, there's a lot of lessons learned through COVID and remote work and employee engagement and keeping people connected. And, you know, so there's some different tools that can enable some of that connection for people that are remote, easy access, frustration-free access to information, sharing of things. So, you know, take a look at those sites. There's another site you get is let's see. This is what the actual standard team. No, that's the wrong time. That is a different site. I go back to here. If I want to create a new site, I can do that. And I could pick a team site. And I could call it my team. Give it some information if I want, say next. Add who I want this. So you can make this public inside of your whole Microsoft tenancy, your whole organization, or you can have it be restricted to certain users. So you could have this be for different departments, you know, different project teams. So you can have different security on it. I'm going to say maybe later. So this is the default team site. So a lot of you probably already have a site set up like this, and you have an address. And that's the nice thing with SharePoint is everything, well, nice thing depending on your viewpoint, but everything is a web address. So what you can do, you know, you can do a lot of what you already know what you can do with web links, right? You can share them, you can bookmark them, you can make them favorites, you know, you can do things like that to kind of organize how you get access to things. But this is just the default one. You can go in here and add news if you have rights to do it. And again, we've got this documents section. And we're going to come back to that in a second because that's what a lot of you are here to really find out about. So I'm going to switch back, go back to all right. So let's talk a little bit about documents in SharePoint and how they work. Because this is important as you organize your docs. So inside of SharePoint, I just showed you all of those things that it can do, you know, all the, you know, pictures and the calendars and other things, and then the documents. Documents is one particular type of organization, data organization inside of SharePoint, and has some very specific features and properties. And the way you organize things, like in that team site I showed you before, it creates one default document library, and then all documents are then stored inside that library. You can create folders in there and things like that. But one nice thing you want to think about, and this is an important part, is you're thinking, oh, maybe we want to use SharePoint. How do we move it to SharePoint? How would we do this? There's sometimes the opportunity to clean things up. Some of your file structures that you have on your current servers may not have been modernized for your present needs. They might be 10, 20 years old. They might be copied over onto your Windows server from your old Novell server or something like that, depending on how long you've been in business. So sometimes there's the opportunity to clean things up, archive things. But sometimes that's an impediment to getting started too. So some people don't do that and they just move it up as it is. Either way really works, but again, we want to make sure you're thinking about how you want to do this as maybe the opportunity to not only use the new technology, but to also improve some of the organization, because Microsoft is not going to really help you, close out your projects and delete the old archives and know what's to clean up and all that. That's something you guys all got to do. So no one's got time for that. Anyway, so that all goes into the document libraries. And then, again, the nice thing is that security. So you could have one SharePoint site with multiple document libraries. And then one of those document libraries could be the one that's for everybody to use. One could be for the sales department and only the sales team has access to that. One could be for finance and admin and only finance and admin has that. And one could be for owners or partners and they have access to that. And then not only have access to it inside of there and securely with your Microsoft credentials, but you've now made it available for yourself, anywhere you go, because now they're available outside of your organization without a VPN. So the way it stores it, when you think about it, what does it actually look like when it's up there? So you don't have drive letters. Like I said before, you have those address links. And you know what? Before we jump into this, I want to do a survey. Ready for that, Amanda? Amanda's on. Amanda's assisting us today and co-presenting. Let's do that survey on how you're sharing documents now. Because before we talk about going to SharePoint and OneDrive, let's see how you're doing that. We got some OneDrive users, SharePoint users. Still a lot of shared drive on a server. Almost 40%. And honestly, we do too. We use SharePoint and OneDrive. We've still got some stuff we haven't migrated because it takes time and another thing to do. Yeah. Paper and pen, good old paper and pen. All right, so wow, 13 of 21 people on right now are using SharePoint and OneDrive, so 62%, 38% email, 43% shared drive, so there's some still theirs. Got some Dropbox users out there, not a lot of Google users out there. That's surprising. It seems like there's always one or more, but and paper and pen. Yep. You share those docs. How's that? You click share and the FedEx truck shows up with a box to deliver that stuff. Yeah. So that's interesting, right? So you can see some people, I think if we had done this poll in the past, let's see. I say stop sharing. Yeah, there we go. So if we'd done that poll in the past, I think those numbers would have been different. But, in the last number of years, I know we've moved a number of clients off their on-premise servers and successfully migrated their documents up to SharePoint and OneDrive. I suspect, other companies are doing that through their IT providers. So it's seeing it switch. So let's see. So back to this slide on what it looks like here. So some of this may look familiar to at least 62% of you. So you've got the documents. These are stored in Microsoft's cloud, right? So just so we're clear, it is Microsoft not only is providing the applications, but they're providing all the hardware infrastructure, all those big, tornado-proof buildings in places with diesel generators and lots of power and big internet feeds coming in where they've got racks and racks of servers. That's their cloud all over the world. That's where your data lives in somewhere in one of those clouds. You can get more specific if you want to know where that is, if that's important to you, but generally that's where you got it. And they don't use drive letters. So they use those web links like I was talking about before. You don't have to use folders. In fact, for some people that's considered inelegant design of using SharePoint, that everything should just be its own file and there's ways to organize it outside of folders. But you get new ways to find documents with search, and you can also sync the files to your devices. So for you Dropbox users out there, you understand about syncing files. And what that means for anyone that might not be familiar is while your data is stored up in SharePoint. Some people, you need to go offline sometimes, or some people want to access the files off their C drive using the familiar Windows Explorer experience and things like that. So, we'll show you how to do that, and you can sync the files so you can actually have them local when you're offline. It's a feature you get. Let's see. And then now we're talking about SharePoint here, but we're also talking about OneDrive. And this is the way I describe it. I think technically I'm accurate, but it's good enough for understanding how this works. So I showed you, there's that document library that SharePoint has. The OneDrive for Business, it's the special document library that's just for you. So there is no group OneDrive. The OneDrive is personal for everybody. You can share stuff out of your OneDrive to other people if you want, but it's really your U drive. It's your My Documents. It's the default security is that only you and your Microsoft 365 credentials have access to what's in there. But it's accessed kind of the same way through the web browser. So it looks kind of the same, and you can sync it down with the OneDrive application on your desktop, which is the same name. The branding's kind of weird on that. Microsoft has changed the name of that over years, and there's also this OneDrive personal edition and some things like that. They're starting to kind of get their arms around having it be kind of a more cohesive experience, but nonetheless, it works by and large pretty well for how people want it. So it's a way of getting your documents. So when you talk about OneDrive, you can put your things there. But again, this is an important thing is, and we're going to get into where you use one or the other. So before before you start diving in, you want to make sure the use case of why some people are using OneDrive for their documents to share with their team versus not. Also, storage quotas. This is another consideration for some of you, depending on how much data you've got. When you get your Microsoft 365 tenancy started up, and you've got, if SharePoint is one of your licenses, you get 1 terabyte of storage, which is a lot when it comes to documents. That's a lot of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It's not a lot when it comes to video. It's not a lot when it comes to tons and tons of high-res pictures, or some of the people that have not pruned their data garden in many, many years. So you have a lot of old things out there. And then you get 10 gigabytes per licensed user. So if you were a 20-user company, you'd basically get 1.2 terabytes of space. Every OneDrive user, so every licensed user gets 1 terabyte of OneDrive space, which is pretty good for that. And then, of course, you can add storage to your subscription per gigabyte. But you can add up to, I think you can go up as high as like 5 terabytes or more, maybe 10 terabytes if you, something like that. But for most people, that's pretty sufficient. We have one client, I think, right now that's bumping up against some of these limits. But again, there's that option to either prune or add more storage. So this is kind of, again, that conversation of where do you put what? Let me see. There's some questions up here. Let me see what I hear. I'm going to pause for a quick question here. How do you set up two-factor on web-based Microsoft 365? That is, call our help desk on that. I would say, well, that's kind of outside the scope of this, but there are some security settings under your account where you would enable two-factor. Sarah has asked about HIPAA compliance. So here's the thing about HIPAA compliance, and this is just kind of a general thing about HIPAA. Microsoft, if you are, let's start this. If you are a HIPAA covered entity and you are a Microsoft 365 subscriber, you are automatically given a Microsoft Business Associates agreement, for HIPAA compliance. So you automatically get whatever Microsoft provides under that level of HIPAA compliance. Now, there are, depending on who you are and who you talk to and all of that, certain potential standards around HIPAA, but really, they don't really give a lot of exact guidance on how and what you have to configure inside of an environment to have it be HIPAA compliant. They've got some guidance around it. There's interpretation of some of those. And it really depends on your needs, because there isn't like a formal standard exactly. It's kind of like how you want to do it and where your risk is around that. That's at least the way I'm interpreting it and suggesting you look at it. And so you are HIPAA compliant out of the box, but it may not meet your specific needs. And then there's probably some configuration and tuning, as well as matching up to some of the specific HIPAA. For anyone what HIPAA is, if you're not sure, that's the Health Improvement Portability Act, Accountability Act, something like that. And that's a bunch of a lot of things around health insurance and all of that, but a lot of it protecting around your health protected information. Anyway, so there are some things you can tune on that. But it's probably more of a looking at your specific needs. And let's see, I'll do one more question here. What is there between private group and team site? I think that is the, yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I think that it probably is the level of permissions that are available for that. I think there's a couple of different templates for that, but I'm not clicking with it in the moment. So we can come back to that one. We got time. Let's see. So getting back to how you would map this out in your head, right? Where do you start to put some of these things? So you want to use the SharePoint document library when, and this is a suggestion, it's not a should or have to, but it's a best practice. We like best practices at Tobin because it makes the systems more manageable and the security is more thought out around best practices. So use the SharePoint document library when the document is part of a team project or a department or a company-wide something or other, right? So you might have that shared document library. You might have another library that is just for finance and admin. You know, one of the things we talked about with SharePoint is you can share, I don't know if we mentioned it before in the security, but you can share your documents now with outside parties that do not have credentials on your system. You can share it with a partner. You can share it with a vendor. You can share it with client. You could share something. So how you share it, you know, gets a little tricky there. So you want to make sure you're doing it in a way that gives you, if you're going to choose to do that, that you understand what your risks are, and you want to make sure you're doing it right so you don't inadvertently share too much or outside the scope of what your actual intention is. So you might create a different document library that's for a partner or for a project, and then you can put security around just that. So kind of not getting too deep, but I think you get the point. And then the OneDrive for Business, again, that's your My Documents folder. In fact, the OneDrive client on your desktop, you can have it sync your My Documents on your desktop up to your OneDrive folder. So it's a neat feature, and but it's just you by default. People can share from it. So if I'm working on something, I can share it with Amanda and she'll get a link, and it's just to that OneDrive document or that OneDrive folder, but it can get a little unwieldy pretty quickly. That's, if you got a little share here and there, that's one thing. But if you want to start managing permissions, you've got somebody new to the organization and you want to get them access to files and things like that, going in and doing all that from OneDrive for Business is a little more challenging. And again, we don't recommend doing that. Let's see here. So I'm going to jump into the documents here in a little bit, but a few more things that you get that are cool things with document libraries. Like some people are like, why bother doing this? You know, there is the getting rid of your old server and moving to the cloud and some of that, but there's some other really cool stuff you get. So one is you get co-authoring. What does that mean? It means 2 people, if you choose, can be in a document at the same time, or 3 people can be in the document, or 10 people can be in the document. So you can be in the document at the same time from anywhere when it's up in Microsoft and up in SharePoint. It's called co-authoring, and you can do that from the web as well as from a modern version of Microsoft Office. You also get versioning, right? You don't have to do the old school versioning you might do right now where you save a copy 1, save a copy 2, save a copy with a new date, things like that, or having to rely on your backup to get old copies of things. By default, when you've got things up there, you can have versioning turned on. What that means is if I go in and create a document now, and then I go ahead and save a document a month later over that document, or I'm sure that's saying that right. So I'm in a document and I'm editing it. A week later, I go in and edit the document again. And I'm like, oh no, I needed my changes from before. I can actually go into the document because Microsoft will have saved a version of that from that week earlier. You just right click on the document and go to versions, and you'll see all the different, I got to get a camera going on myself here soon for incorporating a video because I got my hands flying here trying to show you how this is working. So you got the versioning and you got the dates, and you can go back and find those documents really easy, which is really nice. But you can also filter and create views of documents. So that's kind of a neat thing. Sometimes people always open up Windows Explorer and they click, sort this and sort that to get to things. You can do that with this and create these views and then store those views as web links to easily get to them. You have notifications now in document libraries. You can get notified that somebody updated a document. You can, inside of documents, you can use Microsoft's comment feature and then get notified about document updates or questions. It's a really nifty feature. You can do workflow. What does that mean? It means you can say, hey, after this, I just created a proposal for a customer, and before it gets sent, I need approval from my manager. And so you can have it when you save the document, it automatically goes to the manager. The manager can review it and click approve, and then you can send it, or the manager can send it, or it can automatically get sent. Some nifty things you can do with workflow. I was mentioning before, you can synchronize files with the OneDrive Sync client. So that is the Windows application. And I think there's a Mac application as well, where you can synchronize your files from SharePoint and OneDrive down to your local device, which again, if you're getting on a plane and you want your documents with you, if you're about to do a presentation and your internet's sketchy, or you want faster access to larger files, things like that, you can do that. There's a recycle bin, so you can go in and easily restore files that you deleted. And searching is far more expansive. Just instead of beyond file name, you can go into the content, and then you can add fields to documents for filtering and sorting, which I'm going to show you. So this is all super cool. So I'm going to switch over to that. Okay, so we are over back in demo mode here, and I'm back at that team site that I created. Again, that good looking site that Microsoft has a template for. You can have news and activity, and main thing is you got documents in here. And let's see, we have in this document library, so this is a blank document library. If I want to create new document libraries, I can actually do that. But right now from here, I'm just going to go and use the system to go. Let me just make sure I've got all my communications back. Yep, I am back. Thank you. Let's see. So from here, because again, this is all web-based, but you could also use this from regular Microsoft Office, of course. But we have the, if I want to say create a new Word document, I can do that. Yeah, thanks for the update. I can name it something. I'm going to call this project report. Right, it's automatically saving because it's web-based, so it's automatically happening there. And that's it. I close this, and now I've got that document, and should rename here if I saved it properly. Yep, project report. And now you can see the document is here. Very easy peasy kind of thing. You can create other documents from here. If I want, I can open up this document in the app, meaning I can launch Microsoft Word. You can have that be a default if you want, so it always launches Microsoft Word. But now there's this nifty feature enabled, autosave. So it's on by default, so you want to be a little careful about that and make sure your versioning is turned on. But now I can go and use Microsoft Office and go ahead and use those documents and do any of that kind of thing. If I want to go back into Microsoft Office, and start from there. I can do my recent documents. You can see it's got that project report document, and it says it's on my team, shared documents. I think someone was asking about that before. Nope, that was something else. It's got that link, so you can see it's in that shared documents. And my team, what's my team? That's the name of the SharePoint site. That's what I called it, if you remember. If I go to open here, you can see on modern versions of Microsoft Office, it has more options for where you can open from. I can open from sites, which is going to look at all the different SharePoint sites I have. And when I go into them, it's going to go into that documents. Should show it. Is I in the right one? Great demo. And where did I put in the communication site? No, I just need to catch up. Or if I have the OneDrive, I've also got a OneDrive here set up, and you can see the difference here. So this says OneDrive, and it's got my credentials here, Jeremy at Tobin Social. So that's the user that's here. You can see that's the OneDrive. That means that's my personal. And then we've got the sites here. Anything here showing up yet? Sometimes it just takes a moment. Lets you navigate them. Anyway, so then of course, you can use the other things for that. But again, no drive letter to get to this, right? No drive letter. Yeah, thank you. Nope, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so closing out of that. So now I've got this document here and I've got this in SharePoint. Now what I can do is, this is a little big here. So what are some things I can do here that I talked about? So one is the versioning. So if I go into here and I click and I say version history, there may not be much of a version history. Well, we got a couple different versions here. So these are each of those copies. There was the date, and then from here I can restore it, I can look at it, I can restore it to somewhere else. So that just happened automatically. Just happened in the background. You don't have to do anything, as long as it's turned on. And like I said, for these team sites, it's enabled by default. Let's see. I mentioned the co-authoring. I've only got the one account on here. But once, let me open it up again. And I'm going to project report. Up at the top, it shows me because it knows who I am. And if there's other people, if I go under the, I can see who I am and who's in there. And then if it was shared with other people, you would see some of those sharing. And if they were in it at the same time, you'd actually see their little icons show up here. So if Amanda was on here, there'd be an A, with her name and like that. And we could be in the document editing and doing things at the same time. It stays where we're at, but you can see other things appear, and sometimes it gets a little fun. It's nice for when people have to get ready for a meeting or any of that kind of thing. People can get in and working at the same time. The other thing you can get is I can synchronize this. So this is when I say sync, it's going to say, do I want to let OneDrive open up? And I don't have OneDrive turned on here. Let's say one moment. It created on my C drive. So this is on my local computer. It created that. Next, thank you, next. Later. Be done. So if I open up File Explorer on this local computer, I now see this new thing, Tobin Solutions, Inc. And if I open that up, I see my team, my doc. Hey, there's my project report. So I can actually open up the project report from here. And there's options when you synchronize to like just have it pull from the cloud automatically, or to keep them offline always if they're important things. I know when I do a presentation. So what else is great on this? We talked about the syncing of those files, and you want to be a little careful with that. If you've got like 300,000 files in this document library and you sync the whole library, guess what's going to happen? It's going to try and do all that, and that can be kind of a big job on the computer and your internet and OneDrive. It can handle a lot, but it can you want to be careful. There's certain limitations, you can sync certain documents, you can sync certain folders, or the whole library. Let us see down here. Let's take a look at some of these fields. So remember I mentioned this is this particular kind of data inside of SharePoint, how it stores documents as this particular list. So with that, you get a name, you get the modified time, and you also get modified by whoever. But what's this add column here? So this is kind of interesting. So if I click add column, let's say that's a project, and I don't know what that is. I'm going to say it's a number, and I'm going to add that and say next, and I'm going to say project number. And say save. Okay. Now, what I can do with that is I can add a project number in here. If I go into the properties of this, or the details, I think. Yeah. And I can put a project number in here. And I can say, I'm going to put the project number in. I'm going to call this project 1234. Whoop. Oh, I got it open, so it's not letting me do it. One sec. It does not let you add the property if the document is open somewhere else. Where else might it be open? Just make sure where it is closed out. Oops. Go into the details. Try this again. File is locked and shared. Good demo, Jeremy. So it's locked right now, but I'm not going to spend time troubleshooting at the moment. It's somewhere. It looks like it's on tab. It's got it open. That is the one thing it does not like, is when someone else has to change those properties. However, for sake of hypothetical, let's say if you looked on the screen right over here under project number, you would now see a 1234. So what would be great about that, right? So if you had the project 1234 there, what could you do with that? Well, now if I click on this, I can sort by that project number. I can group by a project number. I can filter by a project number. So it allows you to add data to further characterize your documents, to further classify your documents, to further identify your documents, to make it easier to find. And then guess what? People can see all that from a phone or from a tablet or from anywhere, because they'll be able to see those project numbers if it were actually working at the moment. So I can also do a new document here and show you what that looks like, just so I'm going to do a new Excel. We'll see if it works here. And call it project list. Close out of that. Refresh there. Project list, go to details. Put in details. Project number in here. Put a 1234. Hey, it's saved that time. We can format it so it doesn't look weird, but for now, again, if I click on this and I say filter by, and I say only show me the 1234, Now I'm only seeing that document in this list. And guess what? You can save this view because it's a web link, right? You can save that view and then save it as a favorite. So this is why some people say maybe you don't use folders in SharePoint because some of those features go away. You can't go across folders with some of those things. So kind of a nifty thing that way. Hopefully you're still hearing me and I'm not just talking to myself. It looks like the internet is still up, or I won't be able to do what I'm doing. Let's see. So there's that. And we talked about adding fields. Another thing you can do is automate rules. I'm not going to get into this real tight, but this is where you get into some of the kind of things. What happens to this document library when a column changes, a rule changes, something like that, a new file is added? You could say, hey, when anyone adds a new file to this document library, send an email to somebody. You can get a lot crazier with this. You can say, hey, when someone updates a document, send a Teams message to somebody and then upload it to Dropbox. Take it out of SharePoint, put it in Dropbox. You can get really crazy with the workflow. But anyways, this gives you kind of a flavor of it. If I go back and uncheck that filter and clear all, and then see all my documents again. If I want to group by project number, automatically does that. Kind of neat. All right. That is enough of that. Let's go back to here. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. Oh, I talked about co-authoring. So you got a slide on that. I don't need to spend time on that again. Again, that's what it looks like, right? So if you have avatars in there and all that, you'll see that. You'll see, a little flag where people are and who's doing what. And literally you'll see the document come to life in front of you. Avoid locked read-only files. You will avoid that when it's working. And you can open it from any device too. You can be doing this from your phone. You can co-author from your phone while somebody is at the office. We talked about versioning. So you've got some information on that for follow-up. It's again what it looks like, how easy it is to work. We talked about the OneDrive application. Okay, good. I'm further ahead than I thought. They talk about the confusing product name and the fact, oh, and there's OneDrive apps for iOS and Android. So all of these documents I'm showing you, once they're up in, whether they're in your OneDrive or whether they're in SharePoint, you can see all those documents from your OneDrive app on your phone. And that's where it's a little confusing. You can see them through SharePoint, but it actually launches them through OneDrive. So if you just want to see your files, open OneDrive, log in with your Microsoft 365 account, and it'll default to your OneDrive. And then at the top is where you can say switch, show me what's in SharePoint, and then you can see those folders. So there's a better demo on that another day, but there's ways to do that. So it's easy. But then you've got your documents everywhere. It could be a contract you're working on. It could be a promotional slick, the PDF that you want to send a client from your phone, but it's at the office. No, it's not. It's in the palm of your hand. Okay. Let's see. Got a couple minutes left here. Let's see. We've talked a little bit about this already, the Microsoft 365 via the web browser, right? That is where I was at before. It's a fast way to get into your documents. Some people still love the full Office applications, and sometimes there's things you can only do in the full Office applications. But I invite you to go in and check this out. And sometimes there's features they add to the web that are not yet available on the desktop. So it kind of works both ways. And if you've got a problem with your Microsoft Office, like it's crashing for some reason, which happens from time to time, you can launch the web browser. Let's see. Yep, pointing out some of these things. So again, this can just be for some of your reference that you'll get. Pointing out some of where these things are. Talked about adding a column. Great, look at all this work we did already. And you can get pretty creative with this. You can have, so I just did a simple number, you can have it prompt you if you have like, let's say you classify your documents and you want to say these documents are for internal use versus external use. You could actually put a column and call it in, and have a drop-down list with just those two options. And then when they go to it, they can put that in. That's super handy. Teams, someone was asking about Teams and where this interacts. So Microsoft Teams does not store any documents. It's weird for people to think about, but it really doesn't. It uses in the background SharePoint. Files are stored in SharePoint. That's why when you're in Teams and you go in the documents, it's going to look pretty familiar. And that's why over here, you're going to see there's a link to open in SharePoint, because that's where it actually is. But if you want to have it go and bring open the web browser and do some things there, sometimes there's some things that are just easier to do from the web browser within SharePoint to manage the documents and things like that. But you can kind of bounce back and forth. But when you open a document from in Teams, it is coming from either your OneDrive if you shared it that way, or from SharePoint if you shared it that way, or made access to it. And guess what happens when you create a team in Microsoft Teams, and inside of Teams, it creates a document section? Guess what it does? All it did was create a SharePoint site and put the document library here. Not put a link to the document library here, I should say. Tight integration. This is what I was sharing before. This is really important. This was a big impediment of SharePoint adoption in the past because people were so drive letter focused. I showed you some of that of how you can get in from Microsoft Office and open directly from SharePoint, or at least I tried to show you, and it that might have been my internet issue too or something. I don't know. Here's that screen, so you can kind of see, again, OneDrive, Sites. If you have a personal OneDrive, it'll also be listed here, and you can open and close files in all of those areas. Sharing, let's talk a minute on that. So this is something that some people are really interested in doing, which is sharing either documents easily internally. I think we have a survey on that, but I don't think we actually have time to do that right now. But I know most of you are sharing documents either via email, or maybe you're doing links this way or something like that. So you can share internally. You can create a link to a document, because remember I said in SharePoint, everything is a web link. So it's very easy to share with email and all that without having to share the entire document. You can control permissions. Maybe you make it read only, maybe you make it read write. And you can also share with people outside your organization. And this is a policy you want to set from the business owners and the stakeholders of where and how you do this and who can do it. But you can share with documents outside. You can send somebody a link in an email to your customer spreadsheet if you wanted to. If you enabled this, if it was available. Now that may be desirable, it may not be, because maybe you're sharing it in your customer spreadsheet, but you're sharing it with your marketing company. That would make sense, right? But again, you want to be careful how you do it and just be aware of this. It's a bigger conversation. We've seen a lot of people have complex failed migrations to SharePoint because they just don't want to follow these best practices. They think, oh, I'll just copy everything up and it's good to go and Microsoft's got my back. And technically it works and a lot of the things happen, but then there's what isn't working around the organization, around security, around carrying forward, things that weren't working before with your file system in terms of organization. So we still recommend, we also recommend you back it up. There are ways of backing up SharePoint and OneDrive outside of Microsoft, and like any system, they should be backed up as well. We talked a little bit about the workflow and automation. Oh, I didn't mention the other thing in the documents. So a lot of you guys do this on like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, where you put someone's name in, you @name them, and it puts a link into your post and all that. You can actually do that inside of Microsoft Office documents. So if I'm in a document and I @mention somebody, or I'm commenting and I @mention something, @mention them, they'll get an email, they'll get a little bell link above their Microsoft Office, letting them know they've got things happening, workflows. So it's got ways to give you those cues that something's happening. For some of you, you want to get off your on-premise server and you want to get to SharePoint, but you just don't want to learn how to use it. You still want your X drive and your Z drive and your whatever drive. So we've got a tool for you called Z Drive. It is not from Microsoft. It's a separate product and a separate licensing cost, but it avoids any retraining. There is a huge cost to your retraining, both in time and frustration and lost productivity. If your documents and you want to just move them up and you want to keep the drive letters the same, you can use that. Maybe that's a way you kind of strike the balance. First, you get up to SharePoint, and then later on, you learn how to use it the SharePoint way. But no retraining is huge. Don't underestimate that. People hate change. People really resist it, really struggle through it, some more than others. So there's a little plan you're going to get. We recommend you try this out first. Don't just say, I'm going. Try it out first. We have a little plan. We can help you with this if you want. It's pretty straightforward, but there are some steps to go through to really confirm you got this dialed in and that it's the right choice for you, because it may not be. Just because you get it doesn't mean you get it as part of your subscription. It may or may not be right for you, or maybe the way out of the box, it may not be right for you and there's some things to do. So that's the plan. That's the end. Thank you so much. I'll stick around for another minute or two if there's any Q&A. I'm going to check in a second here and see what I might have missed in the chats. Hopefully you've been hearing me and I'm not just talking to myself here. But thank you very much. I hear there's some weather happening or coming, so be safe. Let us know how we can help. If you got any questions around this or you'd like further conversation, please do our survey. When that comes out, we'll give you a copy of the slides, and be candid. Let us know. Again, sorry about the internet. I should have a backup or something at home. And maybe you want this same meeting, but you want this with some other stakeholders, or you want to talk more specifically about how, have this meeting, but talk more on the court example with your business and what that would look like. So let us know. Or you want to talk about security, another favorite topic. Follow us on social media. Thank you. Have a great day. I'm seeing lots of thank yous out there. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And be well.